Good night, everybody. Tonight, we're going to discuss an exciting topic that everybody's involved. Most parents today are involved with sending their children to school. There's a new school year coming, and there are a lot of things associated with health and well-being of children in this period. The summer is over, and exciting days are behind, and children now have to strap in, so to speak, and that includes their parents. For a new year, requires a lot of organization, running around, shopping for school supplies, and primary concern and focus is on scholastic side of the school year, and very little concern is with the health and nutrition or things that come up throughout the school year for children. And the parents have to be aware, and they have to be able to circumvent some issues in the future down the line, and also make sure that the home is a place of rehabilitation from the school, as we're going to discuss some of the minuses of being in the public setting in the school. And that requires several considerations. And today I would just want to, with the brush, white brush strokes, paint a little bit of a system that any age child can, and their parents can figure out the best way of protecting health and growing, because all children, young children, they're in the process of growth, development. It's a central nervous system development, skeletal muscular development, mental development, and any deviation from good nutrition, from good environment, from the safe environment, can result in some unwanted and undesired effects on children, and their systems, all 12 bodily systems could be involved. And depending on what age they are, whether they're young children in the kindergarten, let's say, or in early grades in school, or hitting puberty and developing some features of a man, woman that is hormonally connected to their health, and later in young adults in their 20s, also in college years, particularly when they leave home and they're now faced with a different environment, and they have to fend for themselves and cook for themselves. They live in dorms or in the different communities with different setting, even different weather, can have an impact on students' well-being. Let's start from the top. Importance of education is obviously front and center in the Jewish community. We emphasize it everywhere. There are plenty of sources. The Torah itself rests on it. Twice a day we say Shema Yisrael. That includes teaching our children Torah, and in all environments, in all places, you should review and repeat the Torah to your children. And that's a primary obligation, not only to do a Shema prayer, but also to make sure the children grow up understanding what their requirements are, the way of the Jewish life, and the ideas surrounding it, and that's a primarily obligation of a father or mother in some ways. Shema b'ni musar avicha ve'al titosh Torah timecha. There's the two concepts here that are very well represented. There's the Torah timecha as well, different understandings of it, but the mother is central to child's upbringing. In fact, one of the reasons that Torah mentions as a restrictive to marrying out, intermarriage with a non-Jewish woman in particular, that's why it goes by the mother, is because the Torah is worried that the mother, as primary influence on the child, might turn the child into an idol worshiper, and that is the concern with the woman. We now facing the Parshat Kitetzel Milchama Levecha, and then Veshavita Shivya, and you have Eshet Ifator in the Parsha, and also the Parsha of Bentsion Morer. So the beautiful woman that you capture in the battle, that is a product of a person's desire, or the goal of a person's desire, and he wants to marry that woman, but the Torah warns that this is not the optimal situation, and marrying such woman would result eventually, like Gemara states, in a Bentsion Morer, which is a rebellious son that does not listen to his parents, And we know in history, in particularly David HaMelech's situation, his sons rebelled against him, and Avshalom rebelled against him, and these were the children of Eshet Yifator that he captured in the battles. So it kind of backfires when it comes to raising your children, because the influence of the mother, or idol worshipping mother, or somebody who doesn't have the right ideas about raising children, then that reflects in the child itself, and then results in tragedies in our history, where the mother's seemingly insignificant on the pages of Tanakh is actually very significant in real life, and one has to be on the same page. Let's say a husband and wife, they have to be on the same page in raising children, and that's also part of the healthy upbringing of children. Unfortunately, today there are a lot of divorces that happen, and children are now bounced between the mother and the father, and I'm personally familiar with such families. They're friends, unfortunately, that some of them are friends with my children. I say unfortunately because there are situations that are unfortunate in that parents are divorced, and there's definitely a deficiency in children that you see, that they're not as confident, and they have these issues that are related to the divorce. And when they interact with their friends from non-divorced families, what you call a normal family, as they call it, then becomes a certain distinction, and that can add to self-confidence of a child. And you try to be understanding and welcoming and nurturing to all the friends of your children, and but there's a limit to how much you can contribute to their everyday life. But again, the neighbor, friend, the relative, these are all important people to surround children and also participate in their upbringing and their chinuch. In general, we focus greatly on the idea of education. Rambam and Gemara, obviously, in the Rambam brings down that every city has to have a melamed tinokot, a teacher or a school or some kind of a setting where one teacher can teach several students, and this will allow a proliferation of learning, particularly in the early age, where child has to learn how to read, how to write, and be able to have a certain degree of literacy, a basic literacy. So the Rambam says that when obligation, Mashivim Melamed Tinokot, we establish a Melamed, a teacher, Bechol Medina, in every country or province, whatever you want to call Medina, Bechol Pelach Upelach, every city, every corner, Bechol Ir Va'ir, whether it's a shtetl or a city, Bechol Ir She'en Ba Tinokot Shel Beit Rabban, Machrimim et Anshe Ha'ir, we put in cherem, we do not favor the city that does not establish a school for their children. We force them, we push them to establish the school because it is so important. Now, this, many don't know, but this exact words are also pronounced by Aristotle, who Rambam was, a fan of, and as far as philosophy, Aristotelian philosophy was close to him, and Aristotle says the same exact thing, that schooling is one of the prime obligations of a state, and children have to be educated to create a balanced society, upright society. And he says the same thing in his book Politics, and you can read and see how almost word for word he describes it the same way. And Rambam also takes that from the Gemara and Kiddushin that talks about educating children, Gemara and Chagiga. And he says that Machnisim et tinokot, we bring tinokot, litlamet, to be educated, kemen shesh or kemen sheva. Again, exact words of Aristotle. He says the 6 or 7 years of age is the primary age for early education. That's important. This is a health aspect, that you cannot just bring anybody. If the child is weak, he cannot study Torah. We have the Masorah, we have a tradition. The Torah is mateshet kocho shel adam. It weakens the person's physique, his body, his energy. Energy actually depletes, and those people don't believe in energy. This is a good example to cite, that the Torah takes away energy. Anybody who studied seriously in yeshiva was really seriously involved, and his mental acuity was required to learn deep things. He understands that it is not easy. If you spend two Sidarim in yeshiva, you're already wiped out by the night seder. You're wiped out. You cannot physically function because your brain actually sucks up most of the sugar, most of the glucose. It's known fact, not to compare, but chess players, grandmasters, they experience the same physical exhaustion at the end of the long game because the mental capacity and the resources required for it are tremendous when it comes to exertion, and that's why chess probably is considered a sport. One of the it's a variation of a sport. General principle the Torah tells us in this regard, to educate the child in the proper age for the proper constitution of the body and the health of the body is chanach na'ar al pi darko gam ki yaskin lo yasor mimenu. You should train the child according to his ways, and when he gets old, it will stay with him. Meaning, you have to get to the bottom of the nature of the child. What does the child want? Is he a passive? Is an active child? Has a tendency to sit and listen, or he wants to run around? And that primarily sets the mood for the educational model. And that's why education primarily in Torah is not a public education like we have today. Torah does not assume public education to be useful. Only in later years, the last 100 years, we have this concept of yeshiva, where maybe hundreds of boys can study, and today has become a norm. But nevertheless, as an educator, I will tell you that smaller classrooms, smaller cohorts are still, in many studies, there are studies done on sociology and psychology, the smaller cohorts and study classroom sizes are a lot better for students. So if you have 5 students, the attention span is better, you get through a lot more material, you give a personal attention to children, and I've been the professor for 14 years, and I can tell you firsthand that you can lose a class once it reaches a certain number. It doesn't matter how good you are, it's just simply a mentality of a crowd. So if you have 30, 40 people in the classroom, even adults, we're talking about auditoriums of 300 in some universities and colleges, that gets out of hand. You cannot have a full control of the class, and many times things get disrupted. Not everybody learns in the same way, and 300 student classroom, there's not much room for questions and inquiry. Therefore, everything is kind of a repetition, regurgitation, taking notes, and no real education is taking place face to face. Everything has to be done afterwards when a student studies at home and does homework. So therefore, the Hanach Na'ar Pi Darko is a very important concept. You have to know what moves that child, and therefore creating an environment for that child that is conducive is very important. Yeshiva used to not be the norm. Norm was 5, 6, maybe 10, maximum 10 students per Melamed or Yemenite had Mori, and you still can see old pictures where only a small group of students are sitting and they're learning Psukim in the Torah, and that is a ultimate way of teaching. Large classrooms, large yeshivas is not a good way of teaching because there's no individualized attention to the students. We compensate for it by providing instruction during the Sedarim, like when freestyle learning, there's a Shalom Meshuv, there's someone to ask questions and so on, but that's only a compensation for deficiency, a natural deficiency of larger groups. In general, today in society, we have a problem with attention span, particularly with new technology and phones, and to force somebody to sit for an hour, 2 hours sometimes. I used to give 2-hour classes, back to back, with a break in between, 4 hours. I was exhausted, students were exhausted, none of it is fair, and you also don't want to create shortcuts or under deliver to your employer and say, half the time in a classroom should be some conversation or waste of time. But it's understood that that person cannot stay put for a long period of time, particularly today with attention that people have, or lack of attention people have, that does not allow for long periods of education. I'm personally not in favor of any school system. These are outdated and old Prussian method post-war educational systems that provided good workers, factory workers. Germany started with the Prussian method, and Prussian method was primarily to create good workers and engineers, which Germany has plenty of. Putting the student from one side and getting an engineer from the other side, post-war seemed like a good idea because a lot of buildings were demolished and cities, and they needed to be rebuilt. Machines and cars and other things had to be brought back to revive the society and bring it back on its feet, which could be a noble idea, except the education quality suffers, and this is what we see today, that young people today are utterly uneducated, even though they've gone through years and years of education. Today, professionals are uneducated. I meet routinely, lawyers, doctors, engineers who are supposed to be well-educated, who are only narrowly specializing in their area of studies, and they are not even close to an intellectual, let alone an erudite in any way. And it is a very sad situation because I can't even have a good intellectual conversation with people who supposedly have earned a doctorate degree. And that is brought, that's why one of the reasons we don't see geniuses today. We don't see, even in the Jewish world, we don't see geniuses. We don't see any new stars emerging on the horizon of Jewish education because it is so impersonal. In fact, every star that we had in the Jewish world, any rabbi that was of any note or weight, had a private tutoring. You can go one by one and see that their parents or their Rebbe or whoever educated them gave them full attention, full education. I believe Chazon Ish was privately educated. Rav Ovadia Yosef was privately educated. They did not go into yeshiva and come out as a graduating class of 1960 whatever, and were able to all be on a certain level of competence. This competence came from their own pursuit of knowledge and the good instruction that was provided by a person that cared for their development and scholastic knowledge that they acquired, and that can only happen in an individualized education. We have mitzvah vakel. Yes, there is an idea of the early age to introduce children to Torah. So tinokot shel bet rabban, this is the only exception where, because they're learning things that primarily require memorization and regurgitation of the psukim, and they scream sometimes the psukim out loud. So you have a multifaceted memorization of texts, which are important in the early age. This is part more training rather than education. And the children are put through that rigorous training, as Rambam points out, that they cannot stop learning because they need to be filled, and foundation has to be set for these children to have text and knowledge of Torah, Chamisha Chumshei Torah, Psukim, ability to read, to write, to understand, to comprehend certain things, prayer, davening, and so on. So these things are important in the early age, and that's why Gemara Chagiga says in Mitzvah Hakel that you have to give an example of gathering that has to do with Torah, has to do with pilgrimage required only adults to come, and rightfully Gemara in Chagiga asks the question, why do children need to come? Gemara in Daf Gimel, because in Gemara says kedei liten schar al meviim, to give schar to those who bring them, because when you see and experience and you take in this energy of kedusha of Yerushalayim, of Beit Hamikdash, and learning, it is something that imprints on the child deeply, and then it becomes more dedicated in his observance, his yirat shamayim, his general spirituality improves because of that. That's why Yoshua ben Gamla, famously in the Gemara and Bava Batra, he established many in many communities groups of children that were sitting and learning. But past that, as we have today in schools where children are for 12 years sitting in school and learning, that is something the Torah does not recognize, even though today we have yeshivas, but used to not be the case. Most children would be educated till the bar mitzvah, and after that they would choose some vocational training that was common. They would take their father's profession, they would be interned, or they would be apprenticed by another master, and through them they would acquire a profession. There would still be times to learn, and there would be kovei itim, so to speak, for learning, and obviously there would be observant and upright people, and they would be charitable, supportive of all things in the community, and they would learn at times when they were not working. And that was the norm. And today, somehow, we've lost it, and we decided that everybody has to be learning at all times, and the quality of learning has gone down. And somehow this collective unconscious, or I would say a collective stupidity, sending everybody to the same program or same Eretz Israel program that delivers nothing. You're not getting back a Talmid Chacham or somebody who even gains extra knowledge. A lot of it becomes just experiential trips that young people take, which in and of itself is not bad. They can experience Eretz Israel. They can even learn something. They can take it in, and I'm all in favor of that. But this is a poor substitution for a rigorous education that we are pretending that they're receiving. Yeshivas today do not. I haven't seen produce some great minds, and if they are great minds by nature, meaning the child is a genius, then they simply can learn anywhere and become self-established Talmid Chacham without need to go somewhere. And again, there are people who are well positioned to be learning all their lives. I'm in no way denying that certain people's ability to be educated. If you have a genius child, if a wunderkind, you have prodigy of some sort, whether it's in science and music or in arts, then you should expose that child to those disciplines. And yes, we have great results from a lot of young people who enter certain area of expertise, and they become experts at that specific discipline. And that's why we have in music and arts a lot of these. But we no longer have that in Torah. We have very little, and because a lot of education has become compulsory, it's not interesting, and it does not provide a room for a ilui, for a genius. Everybody has to learn the same thing. And because it's not personalized, those bright minds are lost in the crowd, and they have to carry the burden of public education rather than private special education, which unfortunately today costs a lot of money. Private tutoring costs a lot of money, and not everybody can afford it. And if the family, particularly large families with 10, 12 kids, they cannot simply provide extracurricular education to their children. And that has been brought about by the same Prussian method system that I was talking about. It becomes, it's more and more expensive to educate each child. Budgetary concerns are everywhere, and used to be very little to educate a child. I think Tsarist Russia spent something like a few rubles on education, basic materials for early childhood education. And today we up to tens of thousands of dollars, and there's no results. And children are just being babysat as opposed to educated in schools and even in some higher learning and private schools and colleges, universities. They're just spending time there as opposed to spending time at home. Everybody heard of colleges as party schools where they party for 4 years and then they get a job because of the diploma. And that's another fallacy, that if you get a diploma, then you get a job. It used to be a case maybe, but not a case anymore. And because of the Jewish system that says you have to go to certain yeshiva or you have to be from certain yeshiva, to get a good shidduch or get a good prospects for marriage, you get a good position somewhere, that all weighs heavily on a young man or a girl, which is a separate subject and topic we should discuss, because young girls going in the seminaries and getting their very costly education is also the hindrance to a lot of things that not used to be this way. The young women were raised at home. They were future Jewish mothers, and by no means I consider that a step back in so-called progress of women. There are women that are obviously capable of higher education, and that should be absolutely afforded to them, but there has to be a more rigorous selection process for those young women to enter that higher education. Today, everybody is in university, everybody's in college, and it becomes a constraint when they decide to have a family and children. All of a sudden, the expensive degrees are pushed to the side because they simply physically cannot pursue both the career and raise children. But the question becomes, do we maintain smaller families just to afford women a career that they worked so hard to achieve? It's not a small question, because a lot of women do choose smaller families today. And then becomes the question of, the Jewish life that we have. Does it change? And it does change. Psychology is not there. The mentality is not there to raise larger families, because the structure has changed. The two people have to be working now to afford the prices that have as a result of emancipation and 8-hour working day for women that was artificially created by communists in the United States. Now has gone to the point where the woman now has to have 2 jobs in order to provide for her family, and sometimes for the husband that is sitting and learning, so to speak. Now, again, if he's a genius and he's a professor and he's working on his PhD and he's going to be earning in the future, and or he's a unique find, and I've seen those people, both in Torah and in secular studies, where you only want to be supporting such people that take upon themselves the study and they have the ability, capacity, and desire to become advanced in their learning. But all the other people should really consider other avenues that are available to them. Now, no less in the intellectual load, but more pragmatic and practical in their particular situation. So, having said that, several health issues come up because of the types of education that we have. The issues can be, again, mental, physical, social, structural, also logistical. Today's child that goes to school is already under someone's auspices of how they see the day of education for that child, from the buses that take 40 minutes to an hour to arrive to school, long lines for everything, until the classrooms settle in, until the teacher has the ability to teach. Nutrition the child receives out of the schedule. Let's say the summer the child spends was more or less good nutrition, but then when the school starts, they have to wait for the bus outside, and they don't have time for a substantial breakfast. They usually have a short sugar-filled breakfast of some sort, like cereal, and then they put on the bus. That sugar burns quickly, and the child, by the time they arrive to school, or they're jittery still from sugar, or the sugar has now has burned up, and the child is experiencing a sugar crash, so to speak, and then starts falling asleep, or and the teacher has a hard time keeping students' attention on the material. So, and then you have the 45-minute periods with some breaks, and that goes on for 6-7 hours. Very little mobility during those times. There's a larger intermission that allows children to play, but again, it depends on the school situation and setting, whether there's a large yard or not, whether the children have ability to run around and stretch their muscles, so to speak. But in some cases, simply not possible in the city settings, and children end up becoming hypoxic, meaning they don't have enough oxygen in the rooms and environments where they are, and that becomes in and of itself a struggle. Now, to take it further, the way children sit in the classrooms, the desks, never liked those desks. I don't understand who designs them. I don't understand how much thinking goes into engineering those desks. They're all made for same person, one height. They're rigid. You have to squeeze in. Does not consider skinnier child, heavier child, same angle of inclination, depending irregard of the child's height. There's no ability to adjust the desk in any way. In some cases, yes, some cases no, but because of the public nature of the education, all these desks and furniture in the classroom is provided by one company that's probably the lowest bidder for a job, so the school can afford on their small budget to purchase this furniture, and everybody ends up suffering because it doesn't fit every student. Students end up falling asleep. They have poor posture. Several things result from that. You have conditions like scoliosis, which is the the spine that is horizontally challenged, side to side. Then you have kyphosis, which is a hump or curve in the thoracic spine. And then you have lordosis, which is protrusion of thoracic spine back, or goes behind sacral portion of the spine. Look up these terms. These are important. And back in Soviet Union, the teachers would always remind you to keep your posture, sit straight. There was a certain degree of supervision of how the student was sitting. They did not allow you to slump on the side or lean on your elbow. You would have to sit straight with the elbows neatly under you. You raise your hand properly and so on. And that set some foundation for proper posture and gait. But in American schools, I think it's free for all, so to speak, as far as that. Teachers are not interested in that. There's no one that takes care of the health in the schools. School nurses are a joke, as much as I can say politely. They're useless for all intents and purposes of any health application. I have seen them fail to put a Band-Aid on, let alone remind the child that they should not be doing something that could be harmful in the long term. And there's no advisors or consultancy in schools for better childhood, health. I mentioned before the Japanese school have the nutritionist on staff that cooks fresh meals for all students. They put it into their system because they understand how important that is. So they have a nutritionist on staff that makes sure the children eat well and, freshly cooked food. There's no such a thing, and there probably will never be such a thing in the United States. You just need to look at the lunch programs in different schools and see exactly what's available, the garbage that's available for children to eat. And your schools will maybe a little bit better because of the kashrut restrictions, but again, it's the same chicken nuggets and other commercially produced foods that are not good, which brings me to this huge problem in the topic is nutrition. Nutrition in schools is inadequate. So the parents have to make sure that besides a quick breakfast they give them in the morning, there's a nice meal waiting for them when they come from school. So at least to compensate for some of the nutritional deficiency that occurred in school. Acidic foods, snacks, sugar, candies being given to young children constantly in order to keep their attention. In yeshiva world, for sure, there's a lot of candies being distributed, and never been a fan of that. Always had to fight that. It's not good to rip the candy out of your child's hand when they get in the car to school because they had too many, and creates a tension in the family. Children want sugar because that becomes the primary source of their energy, and they cannot live without sugar. And that entire educational process is jeopardized because of the nutritional component. So the parents have to make sure the children are not right away engaged in the homework, which I hate terribly. I think that there's no such a thing as homework. There should not be a homework. It's a further control and domination of the system on the children at home. It's taking over our families and taking over our ability to raise our children. It's a government's desire to control every aspect from K2 to college, and taxpayers are paying for it, and government just has more control over what children do and eat and how what the teachers are just participants in this process, and yes, they could do something about it, but usually their hands are tied because they're just like any other licensed professional. They have to follow orders, and child is constantly, it's like in jail. It's no different. Schools are jails for all intents and purposes. They have probably worse meals than in jails, and they take the same buses to school and back home. They are constantly reminded that they're doing something wrong, and they have to obey whoever is giving them instruction, and that is not a conducive to any learning or behavior. If anything, makes children or docile and compliant, or makes them rebel. If it makes them rebel, it's even worse situation, because then they put on the Ritalin or Vyvanse and any of these drugs, and they declared ADHD, ADD, and all these labels that they attach to them because of the tobacco science that they're running on these things on psychology, because there's no proofs of anything. They don't even know what these drugs do, but they know they work to relax a person. But what ends up happening that we have a forced compliance in the schools. Strangely, Noam Chomsky talks about that forced compliance that exists, and it should not be. Definitely not in the Torah value of there's no such value as having hundreds of students come to the school. And because government offers money, because it's lucrative business, children should be put through this. But the primary reason is because the parents can't afford not to send children to school. In some way, you can understand this problem because it's a compounded problem over decades. It didn't happen yesterday. It happened many decades ago when mother had to go to work, and that took her out of the home, and primary caretaker of the children now has to work to pay the same people who are educating the children. And in private school setting, this could be $100,000 if on a large family, just a bill for education. Yeshivas are private schools, and they being in the system, never liking it, never fully understanding why we can't change some core aspects of it, but understanding that in general it's a business and they have to make money to be effective in some way. So then we end up paying for it, and the tuition costs are very high, and I don't know how people afford it unless they have some support. And when they have support, then other people are involved in the children's education. Young people today who can afford to send children to school primarily send it with some support, meaning the parents help pay for things. The grandparents participate today in tuitions. They donate to institutions that educate their children, and these institutions constantly are snoring or begging for donations from every relative possible because they're constantly in the red. It's a bottomless pit, and at the end of that, there's no education. All it is babysitting for those times when both parents have to be working. That obviously creates scenarios of stress. A child comes back to the house, and even when at home, the parents don't have time for the child at times because not only child has homework, but the parents will take work to complete some of the work at home, and child is again left to his or her environment where they can now get on the phone and start texting their peers, which again creates an environment of non-engagement, physical non-engagement, no movement, sedentary lifestyle, and all of that can again impact their musculoskeletal health, their mental health. Parents are many times unaware of who children are talking to, which can create some even dangerous situations of young adults associating with people who could be harmful. There could be drugs involved, there could be other things involved, particularly in times of sexual development, boys and girls, where in the religious community we try to manage the interactions. That is important, obviously, but one has to also understand that there is a developing body, and the hormonal load on both male and female population of teenagers is tremendous. And anybody who's been a teenager understands that there's a lot of changes happening in the body, and parents have to be aware of that, because this can impact their not only health but their mood, and then become angry or upset or constantly battling with parents over each thing. And excuse could be anything. Even the minor excuse could be something that can create a shalom bayit issue of stress the relationship with one or both parents, and that can result in certain health issues as well. Abusing drugs or alcohol, then child tries to find himself or herself, and they try to act as an adult, and they can end up drinking or driving, God forbid, and causing some problems. And then in some cases of teenagers getting injured, and also there's some loss of life in this age, so the parents have to be very careful. And schools, unfortunately, do not pay attention to these things. As you see, the American landscape of schools is a disaster, with the multiple shootings and school shootings and other things. And these are all frustrated children who are given drugs by the system, by medical system. It's not they're buying drugs on the corner from a drug dealer. They're buying it from the doctor. Doctor is the drug dealer today. Schools are the drug dealers because they want the child to sit quietly in the classroom. They want to control the child, and to control the child, they have to sedate the child. To sedate the child, they need a whole cocktail of drugs, depending on the child and the severity of sedation they want to produce, and that is in and of itself a crime. These people are criminals. I don't want to say each individual person, but the system is a criminal system that pushes people through compulsory education to become drug addicts, and that later on you'll see situations when these frustrated children they do some bad things to themselves or to others, and it has nothing to do with gun control or because once somebody's mind is not there, anything becomes a weapon. Anything becomes a reason to be an outlier, to misbehave, to be rebellious. And this idea of the rebellious child in the Torah is really echoes throughout generations. We always have this example, although the Torah's example may be more of a fantasy example, because the Gemara itself doubts whether such a child can exist, or it's a theoretical idea, it's a metaphorical idea. But we believe that every generation has their challenges, and today's generation, the health and the mental health is the challenge of young people in today's generation. The stability is not there, family stability is not there. Like I said, a lot of divorced homes, or where parents themselves are the victims of the medical monopoly on drugs, and which are prescribed freely by so-called medical professionals. Again, you can look at the cases going on through courts now with postpartum depressions and mothers committing a heinous crime against their children. I heard a statistic of like 200 cases of mothers every year taking lives of their children due to different prescription medications and Xanaxes and antidepressants and other things, because the people are trying to cope with their life situations, and the fastest way to cope with it, as a system trained everyone, is the drug. And drug has become now a primary go-to, when maybe in 60s, 70s there were other drugs and other problems, but nothing like today, because today the system itself is prescribing drugs, and we have to nip it in the bud before it becomes a problem. And children is that time when they're going to school, make sure that they stay not only safe, but also nutritionally sufficient, healthy, and able to have enough resources in order to counter some of these abuses and offenses that system puts on them. The person does not learn, Gemara says, the person doesn't learn but what he wants, where he wants to learn. So these are also interesting considerations. Just because yeshiva happens to be in your neighborhood, it doesn't mean that your child belongs there. And just because everybody sends to Israel for a year of study, it doesn't mean it's for your son. I myself did not push my children to go. Only one of my children, let's say, went to Eretz Israel, but only for a short period of time. And we're not pursuing, I'm not giving my money to sometimes useless educational pursuits that people deem somehow important, but in not everybody's case it's important. Community is very important as well, which community you live in. A state is very important. Recently, I've been asked a lot about childhood vaccinations because a lot of parents don't want to vaccinate, but in a state like New York that does not have exemption, and I spoke about this last lecture. And if you don't have an exemption, then I have only few choices for these types of parents. They can move, or they can homeschool, or they can send their children to nearby states that do accept exemption. Vaccines today is clearly, to me, present no health benefit. It's a fallacy on its face, because it does not protect anybody through herd immunity. There are exemptions in every nearby state around New York. New Jersey has exemption, and therefore we can freely travel between the states. And nobody says that somebody who did not vaccinate in New Jersey is going to infect people in New York. There's no such a thing, and we're not afraid of it, and does not present any real danger, as the CDC might say, or whatever. So it's a long thing, but logistically, the parents should obviously prioritize the health of their children and do not expose them to drugs or chemicals or toxins that are not necessary for their well-being, for their health. and choose them healthier alternatives. Now, sometimes it's not possible. I've also run into situations where the one or both parents have asked me what to do because they're not on the same page when it comes to vaccinations or giving drugs or Ritalin or ADHD situations. The parents sometimes are not on the same page. And the question becomes, do they, one of them told me, do I keep my marriage or do I keep my health of my children? Which is very, very unfortunate situation. I would say the children's health cannot be jeopardized. Even if there's possible problem, you should try to avoid any shalom bayit issues. But this should not be a choice where the children have to somehow be a sacrificial lamb for a situation between two parents. They have to come to agreement. It's good to be on the same page. And this extends itself to a shidduch world. When two young people are dating, they should definitely talk about these aspects of future aspects of education, where they want to live, what type of education the children will receive, and do they agree on not giving children drugs to make sure they sit in the classroom, or to vaccinate them in a way that can impact the child, particularly some families that have vaccine damage in the family. One of the reasons people don't vaccinate is because they've experienced adverse reactions from vaccines, which absolutely are real by the admission of the vaccine manufacturers. And there are billions and billions of dollars paid out to families who petition the vaccine court for sue the government for vaccine damages. Billions of dollars are paid out in damages. So it is real. And the families that don't want to go down that road should really look and inform themselves about vaccines and the potential dangers that might carry. And that's important for the health of the child. Because if the child gets a reaction from vaccine, or allergic reaction or neurological damage, the parents have to be aware, and they should be watching. Even in the case where they decided to vaccinate, they should be watching the child's behavior, ability to have an eye contact, their balance, because it all affects the nervous system. And if they notice something, they should immediately take action, whatever the appropriate action might be under the circumstances, because I've seen children lose their neurological abilities. They develop other chronic issues, ear infections and other things. Like I mentioned, there are studies comparing now vaccinated and unvaccinated children, and unvaccinated children are much healthier than vaccinated children. By the virtue of just this comparison, the Torah would side halachically, morally, in every possible way with not vaccinating. Not because we know exact cause and effect, but because we err on side of caution every single time. It's a golden rule in the Torah that if something brought suffering, we have to be cautious about it, and we cannot just blindly trust a system to provide safety when there's no safety that can guarantee. Another aspect of health would be, let me see. Yes, the eyesight is an important part of children's health. It is something that I myself lost in 5th grade. My eyesight went down, and I started wearing glasses, and I still wear them, but I have worked on my eyes and trained my eyes to see better. And it's possible, there's several methods to train children's eyes to make sure that after a long day of staring at screen or on the board or in the book or on the phone, they can relax their eyes and train the muscles. There's 6 muscles surrounding every eye, and they have to be trained like every other muscle. They have to be exercised, relaxed, massaged to bring the blood flow to the eyes. And also there has to be a active focusing of the eye, because mostly eyes focus on the nearby objects like screens, phone, and they're not focusing in the distance. And they have to have that close and far focusing. It's called active focusing. You should look into it. And there are some methods like a Bates method for eye training and eye exercises. Look into that and make sure children and adults also can do these exercises. I wrote my own myopia down from -3 -6 to -325, which is an achievement. I would say that's something that created a lot of relief to my eyes and brought down the eye pressure. And I no longer require very thick glasses. I can even drive on a sunny day without glasses. Let's say I don't, but I could if I wanted to, which is important in situations where in the dark I still have trouble, let's say, seeing. It's better daytime. So, but you should evaluate your children's eyesight and keep track of it, and make sure that glasses you order are not right at the edge of their eyesight, meaning they're very strong. They prescribe very strong glasses, and eyes get weaker, get used to the glasses. They become like crutches, and then further, myopia develops, and greater nearsightedness needs to be addressed with thicker glasses. And then things like contact lenses are also bad because they connect with the cornea of the eye, and then infections can develop and other things. And a lot of girls in particular are a little bit ashamed to wear glasses in some situations, particularly dating, and will use contact lenses, which if left in the eye for long periods of time, can create inflammation, irritation, and other problems with eyes. High myopia can also lead to glaucoma and later on in life, and one has to be careful with that. Very important thing is sleep cycle, circadian rhythm of a child. Because of what I mentioned, the children are forced to wake up early to wait for the bus. They come home tired. They have inadequate nutrition. They stay up late to catch up with their friends. They end up today, children go to sleep at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, which was not something that we did in my days. You always went to sleep 10, 11 o'clock because you had to wake up early in the morning. But today it's kind of disappeared, and children and even adults are running on maybe 5 hours of sleep. And that question is it a deep sleep, is it REM sleep, or it's not a REM sleep? But definitely irritation and mood swings can result from lack of sleep. Lack of sleep is probably one of the most deadliest of all deficiencies. Nobody can cure lack of sleep, but only sleep. The person cannot just lie down on the couch and rest and regain his energy. People have to go to sleep, and no scientist can explain how sleep works. We only have some indications of some studies that looked a little bit into it, but by and large, we do not know what happens to the body and why, in a parasympathetic way, clears out toxins and maintains everything that we have, and our ability to live normal life depends on ability to sleep. I know people who are been committed to mental institutions. I'm talking about young people, Jewish boys and girls who have been committed to institutions, and they've been drugged there, obviously, to keep them at bay. And now they have lost their appetite, they've lost the ability to sleep normally, and that only compounds the effects of their mental state and becomes an even bigger problem. So sleep is paramount for people who want to have health in general. Cardiovascular fitness, all the blood flows, blood supply, nerve supply. The deep sleep is also important. The foods that you eat can also disrupt sleep, and stress levels can obviously change, particularly in the developing child who is undergoing certain stressors, and the body cannot always cope with these stresses. So that's why Rambam means when it says that a child's physical constitution has to be suitable for educational environment that he's in, because at that point the Torah can weaken the person. Mental exertion can weaken the person. So that also the system shoves same age children in the same classroom where they may not be suitable for that rigorous, let's say, program or schedule. And therefore the parents, is their primary obligation is to know that this child can do it and this child cannot do it. And they have to know their children. They have to listen carefully to their complaints, because it's not just simply they're lazy or they don't want to do it. Sometimes there's a real issue behind it, and then some parents come to regret it later on when the child really goes off and can no longer take that environment. So, in closing, I'm going to say the chinuch has changed today. We don't have what we used to have as chinuch. Yes, a lot of other things changed. The parents are different. There's less corporal punishment, let's say, but there are more abuses of other sort. There's more sexual abuses in the school setting, unfortunately, and again that presents the entire psychological and mental challenge to students today. Who to trust, who is reliable, is very hard to tell, and many institutions have protected their teachers who abuse students. I grew up in an environment of strict teachers. We didn't have, as you know, almost no sexual abuses, but there were physical abuses. Teachers used strike the children, was the ruler, it was the stick. There was still some remnants of that corporal punishment that can result in some rebellious behavior. But there are again acceptable modalities on the East versus West modalities, which Western people don't understand, but Eastern people reject the Western criterias, and Western people reject Eastern criterias of punishment and rebuke and so on. When in the East is more physical, and in the West is more tolerant. In the modern times, and that having said that, one has to be careful. In today's psyche of the child is a weaker psyche. It's not capable of a tough environment, and many times even the U.S. military complains that they don't have as many recruits today. Yes, all the gender euphorias and all the identity crisis that young people have today could be the result of multiple things that I mentioned in this talk: nutrition, environment, family, drugs, vaccines. These are things that can impact the developing young body of a child and present a problem later on in this way, and in the inability to decide who they are, what they want. And now some governments have facilitated this by isolating children even further from their parents and making decision on the child's behalf. And what I discussed prior as informed consent is being eroded by institutions and by the state, not giving enough power to the parents and taking that power away and encapsulating children in an environment that is compulsory and not conducive to learning. If we repeat that in the Torah environment, then we're basically committing the same crime, and we already see the results of that. But not having children succeed in Torah learning, we don't have inquisitive minds anymore, and we have that we have a certain unconscious state where nobody has solutions and nobody wants to do much about it. So that Carl Jung warned about collective unconscious, and we're experiencing that. And more personal the education, more homeschooling, more times alone with your children that you can sit down and go through a parsha or go through whatever they did in school and actually teach them what those teachers in school attempt to do and don't succeed. Actually take the subject, whether it's a math or physics and natural sciences, and go out in the nature and show things and touch things and in the nature, in the environment. I did that because I did homeschooling, so nature was the classroom, and still is. And real conversation is what captures their attention, and real care is what allows the student to lock in and create a connection to the parent. Again, primary obligation is on the parent to educate the child, not the school. Right? The father is obligated to teach Torah to his child. I'm happy to say that I had opportunities, particularly was in the homeschooling environment, to teach Torah to my children, and even if it does not produce more concrete results, let's say, that people expect of the yeshiva, but it produces genuine results. Child is genuinely interested. It does not become desensitized to any teachings of Torah or the mitzvot, and he pursues that in a genuine way, in a natural way, in an organic way. Then you as a parent have achieved something. You've protected your child's health. You've instructed your child. Obviously, we have a limited time till age 18 legally, and till age 7 probably. That's what famously philosophers said in Sparta. They would say, "Give me a child till age 7, and I will show you the man for the rest of his life." And that is important because. In that short period of time, we should not be depositing our children in an institution that does not care for them, but rather rip away as much time away from the institutions, away from government-run programs, and educate them at home and with family, with relatives, with good friends, neighbors, who can all participate in this wonderful process of bringing up young people and making them responsible, making them curious, and keep that curiosity going so they are less stressed, less distressed, less depressed as a result of the environment. Keep the drugs away, provide healthy food, less sugar, more movement, more engagement, mental acuity, minerals, vitamins, micronutrients, healthy, good workouts, good philosophy also is important, that it sets the mood, allows the person to understand his goals, drives, deal with desires, with sexual desires, with stressors, even diseases to a degree. And all of that makes a wholesome man and a family and a community as a result. And we all should hope to benefit from our children and other people's children, because they're going to be the future of our community and the country in general, the world in general, and become good human beings who fear God, understand and have humility, walking in the God's ways, and achieve the bracha, the blessing that it brings with it. I thank you for your attention. Have a good night.